I'm going to go shut my door.
We'll be getting started in a moment or two. Of course, I like to give a minute or two for anyone who's running just a bit late so they don't miss out. Okay, I am going to go ahead and jump in and get us started. Welcome everyone to our affiliated student organization training. We know that a lot of you have been working for a short time, others a long time with affiliated organizations. So we wanted to provide this support and outreach for everyone to learn more about different processes and procedures, exactly what an affiliated org is, because some of you inherited affiliated organizations and really what the expectations are, what you need to know, etc. So for today, here's our agenda of things we'll be covering. Um, Starting now, of course, the welcome and purpose. We'll get into that more in just a moment. What is an affiliated org and what's the difference between them and our registered student orgs? What are the responsibility levels with an affiliated org and who has what responsibility? Risk management and legal concerns, finances, funding, contracts, uh, expectations of advisors, and then we'll be giving you a tour of Miami Central. Um, so, for everyone here, I'm JS. I'm one of the assistant directors for student organizations in the Office of Student Engagement and Activities. And I'd like to turn it over briefly to Daisha to introduce herself and the office.
Hi, everyone. My name is Daisha Wood. I serve as the Director of Student Engagement and Activities, as JS said. So I provide support for the entire office. I know the office structure is probably a bit new to everyone as we made the change for the office last year. So we're coming up on a year of being a student engagement and activities, and we oversee programming that is predominantly put on by our Miami Activities and Programming Board, and then student organizations, operations, and support. So thank you all so much for being here today during a very slow Friday, a holiday Friday. We appreciate your time today, and just let us know, reach out if you have any questions regarding your student org.
Thank you very much. And then Kara and Lisa, if you would like to introduce yourselves as reps of the office.
Hi, everyone. My name is Kara McIntyre. I am the Assistant Director of Student Activities and Programming here at Miami. So I basically advise MAP.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lisa Sheard. I do work with student orgs in terms of finances and contracts, and I also work with the other two offices in kind of this combined area, the Wilkes and the Greek office.
Thank you all very much. So what is the difference between an affiliated student org versus a registered student org? By the way, and I'm going to go ahead and quickly share this just in case you want to see any of them now. I've shared the presentation in the chat. We're recording this and we'll be sending it out late next week. And we'll also have a copy of the presentation there because all of these are that you see like this are links that you'll be able to find. So this will direct you to the policy library. But we're going to talk more and just basically get into what it is. So an affiliated student org is a group that has formal relationships with a department, office, program, division. And because of that relationship, the organization may receive additional support, resources, oversight, and direction from the affiliated unit. And the advisor department may have increased responsibilities for the organization's activity. We will be getting into that more in a moment. But the way I like to sum it up for people, I advise both affiliated and registered student orgs and have for significant portion of my time here. And if a registered student org I work with, they say, hey, we want to do this, I can say, well, I don't think that's a good idea. And they can go, well, we do. But if an affiliated org says that they want to do something and I think it will be negative towards Miami, that's where I can step in and say, no, that's not really going to work. So, differences in a number of areas between RSOs, as we'll be calling them, you'll hear RSO a lot, or departmental or affiliated orgs. The terms are interchangeable, including in the policy library. So, either way you hear it. So, who is responsible for the org? In the case of registered student orgs, it's the student leaders of the organization. While all orgs have to have an advisor to help support them, the students running the organization are responsible for everything with the org. Whereas for a departmentally affiliated org, the department or division and the advisor really has much more of the responsibility in the say of what can happen and what the focus and purpose of the group is. So, what are the legal differences? We'll be getting into more of how this applies with policies, but I always like to share a court case that really got this whole ball rolling back in the late 1980s. So, there was a court case at the University of Southern California where a student organization wanted to hold a broomball tournament. At the time, USC did not have an ice arena on their campus. I don't know if they have an ice arena now because it's not important for the story, so I've never bothered to check. Um, so they didn't have an ice arena, so the student org that wanted to do a broomball tournament decided to go off campus to a local ice arena. During the event, they didn't have proper safety equipment. A student got hit with a stick in the eye and lost her vision in that eye. She was going to school and was close to graduating to be a doctor, to be a surgeon. Her and her parents wanted to sue for potential future lost wages, so they filed a lawsuit against the University of Southern California. And USC said, it's not us. We didn't plan it, wasn't on our site, we had nothing to do with it. So they decided to sue the venue, and the venue was like, It's not us either. We had nothing to do with it. So as it went through the court systems, what the courts ruled, and this really gets into what I was talking about the whose responsibility and the legal things, is, excuse me, the courts ruled that a student org, the person responsible, unless the organization is directly affiliated with a department or division, the students planning the event are responsible and the ones who could get sued. So that led to a number across the country of colleges going, okay, we have to figure out what this departmentally affiliated org is. And that's what we get to here. So what are the legal differences? Student leaders are really the ones who are the ones legally responsible. And you'll see this with contracts. You'll see this with other things as we go through the presentation here. Who's responsible in that way for the affiliated? That's the department or division, and that's Miami. So that is a big, and one of the big dividing things that we have to be aware of is who is legally on the hook and who's responsible there. And we'll get more into that in a bit. So what can they do and not do? Registered student orgs, there's general rules through the policy library and other things that can show what they can do. There are certain things no org can do, but for the most part, the students get to plan, and as long as it fits within the university policies, then they can do pretty much anything they want. What can an affiliated org do? That's often restricted by the advisor, department, or university. I have an example here that we'll be getting into, I'll be mentioning again later, but an example is at some point about 8-9 years ago, Jane Brownell ruled that all affiliated organizations within the Division of Student Life could not have events at bars. So that's one of the examples of where the department or division has a say in what the organization does. So you may be an affiliated org if. A lot of people, and especially the students I've found, do not know that they're an affiliated org, whether they are or not, and how exactly that works. This has come up a lot with registration in Miami Central, where people will be like, oh, yes, we are a registered student org, or we are an affiliated student org, and they're on the wrong side of that, and we have to work with them. So if it's sponsored by or housed within a department, if it uses departmental resources, funding, staff support, or university branding, if its activities are closely tied to a university program, office, academic department, or institutional function, if its advisor has a stronger oversight role than what a general registered student organization advisor would, and if the org serves to enhance the role of the department or division. So looking at that a little more about what the responsibilities may look like in an affiliated org. Again, these are fully set by the department or division that's hosting. So when you look at different affiliated orgs, if you look at the Associated Student Government, while it has its advisors that maintain and manage different parts of that, it is the student government for the campus, and it largely, the students run what's going on there. The marching band as an affiliated student org is much more under directorial and departmental control. Like the students have a say, but they're not the backbone of the organization as much for planning as it would be for something like the student government. So here's our responsibilities broken down into the 3 categories: student leaders, advisors, and the department or division. So the student leaders will typically manage the day-to-day operations for a lot of affiliated orgs. The advisors are there to provide guidance and oversight, and the department or division is there to clarify the expectations for affiliation. If you want to be affiliated with us, you must. Or we created you as an affiliated organization, therefore you must. So student leaders will typically submit events and forms. The advisors will review the risk, the finance, any policy concerns. And the department or division approves the use of departmental resources, which could be funds, materials, physical spaces, etc. A lot of affiliated organizations still, just like any other student organization, will have general members, and addition to their leadership team. So frequently it's the student leaders who do most of the communicating with the general members of the group. The advisors there supporting the student leadership and empowering them to have their role and what they need to do. And then the department or division ensures the alignment with the department or division. Student leaders will make sure to follow all university policies, whereas the advisor is helping them understand and navigate those policies and procedures and what they need to do. All advisors are doing that for the most part, but with affiliated orgs, it's an even heavier hand for lack of a better term, because you need to make sure that as a part of the university, as affiliated orgs are, that they are following those. And then the department or division should really be promoting and sharing the accomplishments of the organization. Partially, the accomplishments of the organization or the accomplishments of the office also, as they're part of you. But also you want to show what good work the students in your area are doing. Students should create student-focused ideas to promote the department or division. That's one of the key parts of what an affiliated org is. I'm a 48-year-old guy. I can't tell you what a 19-year-old college student is necessarily wanting to see, but the students can tell me, and so I know that. So that gives us that student branch and outreach to really do things that will really impact our students. The advisor should help with leadership transitions. Advisors may be part of or all of selecting new leadership for the organization. Sometimes it's strictly the department determined. Sometimes the departments let the student orgs do it, or student orgs do it except for the president. So it's different with different organizations. And then the department or division should support continuity when advisors or students change. So we do have a lot of people that in their job description, it will say you are the advisor of this affiliated organization. So when that person leaves the university, the department or division should make sure that the organization's not going to miss a beat from this new person coming in. So when we talk about risk management, this is one of the big things, of course, as we talked about the legalities and the things we have to consider there. When does an affiliated org or activity, anything with it, create university risk? The important thing to consider is when we talk about risk, a lot of people are like, someone will get injured. You think of MAP bringing a Ferris wheel or another inflatable thing or something like that. But we're not only talking about physical risk. There's other types of risks that you need to consider. So with anything that the organization's doing, events that they're planning, you should consider the reputational risk, not just the physical risk. You should consider if there's a financial risk to the university, a contractual risk, or a policy risk. So you're considering all of these different things of the students want to do this. Is it going to cause any level of the risk? And what level risk are we comfortable with? There's risk associated with everything. It's just finding that balance of what you're comfortable with. So who approves the high risk activities that a affiliated org wants to do? It boils down to the department. The department says whether they're willing to take that risk or not. Should the students be able to do this, knowing that ultimately it falls on the department or division. But all events should still be registered in Miami Central, as that just adds an extra layer of safety and review for everyone to make sure people know and it gets forwarded to the proper parties to know what's going on. So some examples of activities that may need extra attention. We're going to get into part of this in just a moment. Inflatables, any type of physical attraction where students are leaving their feet and doing any kind of activity that there could be risk in. Food trucks. There is a very specific and Workday food truck form that people need to fill out to bring food trucks. There's a lot of policies and procedures of where they can be, what they must provide, etc. And then realistically, anything with an external vendor providing a service or coming to campus. You really need for that, to avoid that contractual risk and the financial risk, you really need to have that contract and go through the process, which you'll hear about in a moment, to make sure that all policies are being followed. So we've talked about policies. What are some relevant policies here and kind of how do they translate affiliated versus registered student org? Of course, we have our policy library, and you should always check there. I even check there for pages I've read 3 dozen times during my time here. When someone comes and asks me a question about the poster policy on campus, say, that's one I've had to go to a lot, or the use of university property, I go there to make sure I'm not missing something that's changed. So I'm constantly going back to double check to make sure the students are doing what they should. So first up, events with minors. And I'll start by saying this is affiliated organizations are one of the few groups on campus that can sponsor events with minors. For the most part, a group bringing minors onto campus is not allowed. And bringing minors onto campus, it should be pointed out, is if you were taking custody and care of the students. So if the Girl Scouts are coming to sell Girl Scout cookies and their Girl Scout leaders are going to be there with them, you're not taking custody and care of the students. The Girl Scout leader still has that. But if you are taking custody and care of the student, the organization must work with a university department or division, whether it's affiliated or not. So in that way, an affiliated org is one of the few who can do those types of things. Now, the other thing in explanation with custody and care that a lot of people may not get, we're not talking about students showing up or undergraduate people, not undergraduate, underage individuals showing up at an event you host. Like they come with their parents to see a comedian or a talk or something like that. You're not taking custody and care of them there. It's when you are taking that you need to consider this. Travel. Travel can be dangerous. I remember a few years ago being home to visit my family on a Thanksgiving, and suddenly news alerts started coming out that there was significant injuries with an accident while the Miami University, one of our affiliated organizations, was traveling. Traveling does pose a lot of inherent risk. So we have the travel policy there. In short, part of it is anyone traveling for student organization business, we have and will have on Miami Central. It was previously on the hub. Travel form, both for registering travel, so MUPD can keep a record of where our students are in case there's anything going on somewhere. They know where to, if we have students there, and also a vehicle owner. If they're driving their own cars, the vehicle owners have to sign something saying that they are taking responsibility, will drive safely, etc. Physical activity and recreation, two things I've put there for you. You should always have your participants sign waivers. That includes the participants who happen to be on your leadership team. Now, there are ways to do this digitally, but I have linked to the General Counsel website where you can see the waivers in general of what you'll need to be asking people to sign. But I know that as long as they are signing in, so for example, if you put a waiver on Miami Central as a form and the student has to log in to agree to it, then that is them guaranteed going in and it's considered a signature that they agreed. We also have the incident report, and I know that sounds scary. And oh no, this means something went wrong. And it's really not. It's more to protect you and the university and the students. It's just to say, hey, this person fell down, they scratched their knee, we treated it with some antiseptic and a Band-Aid, and all's good. It's just something that you need to fill out for any of those little incidents that happen with student organizations or with your office on campus. Food service, I have the link there to catering, and one of the important parts of the policy to know is that inside the Goggin Club Lounge, Markham, Shriver, and the Armstrong Pavilion, no external food can be brought in. So you need to be using catering in those locations. Other times, feel free to get an SGS party pizza for the group or whatever you need, but you need to make sure the food stays at the safe temperature and there's safe food handling going on at the event. Outside speakers or performers. Affiliated orgs bring a lot of these. there'll be an academic department that they bring a speaker in their area, and the student org is responsible for the planning. So again, those students can get the experience they need of how to plan an event and things like that. So this is something to consider, and we'll go over contracts. A lot of what you need to do regarding this falls into the contract procedures. Alcohol adjacent events or events at bars and restaurants. So the policy library states that student organizations in general cannot do events where they are providing alcohol. If a department chooses to have an alcohol adjacent event or allow the organization to do, say, a fundraiser or another event at a bar or restaurant, that's a discussion between the organization, the advisor, and the department or division. So again, as an example, Student Life, Jane does not want the Student Life organizations doing an event there. However, as another on the flip side, the Miami University Fashion and Design Club, as part of their fashion show, works with the College of Arts and Science to do a wine toast at the beginning for the VIPs of the event, and that's sponsored by that department who they work with. So that kind of shows you a little bit of the difference with alcohol adjacent events or events at bars and restaurants. This is under this is one of the places where the affiliated versus registered kind of gets hazy to both protect our students and ourselves. Any use of the university name, logo, or trademarks. Affiliated organizations in this way count as student organizations. So what that means is they go through the same procedures to get things approved if they're wanting to use Miami logos, Miami trademarks, etc. So they need to get it approved, but they do not have to, as many of our offices do, use certain marks, certain trademarks, trademark logos or anything. They can have their own logos. They can do things that are not in Miami's brand. So they have that ability to be more creative and do things. They're that creative outlet for your department. If they use the Miami branding, they have to use it correctly, but again, they don't have to. And then this is one that gets kind of interesting, and I'm going to use our friends over in Greek Life as an example here. Affiliated organizations, as student-run organizations, even though they're overseen by the department or division, are still student-run. And while a department or division cannot make a political statement, an affiliated organization, if the students feel that it's something they want to do, can make that statement. So the example I was going to use is a couple years ago with Collins Law, which is a hazing prevention law that was passed in the state of Ohio. The Greek councils were able to come out and say, we are for this law. We want this law to help stop hazing, whereas a department of the university cannot go out there and make a political statement saying we believe this law should pass or we believe this is what should happen. So affiliated organizations do have that freedom. It's one of the large purposes of a group like ASG is to go out there and make those statements representing the student body. And then using Miami resources or facilities, this I've linked here the use of university space policy. And there's several policies regarding the use of space, free speech on campus, how to reserve those spaces that you can get there. But in that way, it works in different ways because a lot of affiliated orgs, the students will reserve the space. But in many others, it is the department or division that's like, hey, we have this room. You can just use it. We'll reserve it for you. So that can go in a number of different ways. Now, I'm going to turn it over to Lisa Sheard and take a drink of water so she can share some of the financial and contract information with you.
Thanks, JS. Let me make sure. Okay, I'm going to need you to stop sharing so I can share my screen. All right, thank you. And away we go. And I'm going to All right, everyone should be seeing a screen with the updated contracting processing on it. I'm going to go through this fairly quickly, but before I begin, I do want to give you some extra little tips that weren't included that occurred to me while JS was talking. Two is there are 2 email addresses that you should know that will help you with this process if you have any questions. The first is going to be purchasing@miamioh.edu. That will get you in touch with procurement, accounting. Basically, it'll start you where you need to if you have questions. The other email is studentactivities@miamioh.edu. That will open a ticket with our department, and that will help you with specific questions about how do student orgs do this or how did student orgs do that. Even if you're affiliated, there are some things that are special to student orgs, and that will get you a ticket that will help you with that. I do want to say that there is going to be an exception to what I'm talking about in terms of contracts, and that is, as JS mentioned, the food truck contract. That is a third form that you may need if you were going to bring a food truck onto campus. And the other exception is going to be for inter-university charges and catering. Now, inter-university charges will not require a contract, but they have to be done differently because it is basically transferring money from one department to another. So that is an exception. And catering is yet another exception. Even though technically they are a university department, they are run by an outside vendor. So they're not going to be done by a journal transfer. So they're a slightly different unicorn again. The third thing I want to mention before I start my presentation is that although Workday is still fairly new, this contracting process for affiliated organizations has been in place for a while now. We've just been lax on it for the past year or so because of Workday being new, everyone learning, and also Workday wasn't quite performing some of the business processes as we wanted it to. So we were not really playing fast and loose, but we were kind of making some exceptions and doing some things a little differently, still following the process basically, but in a slightly different way. So what you're seeing today is not new. We're going to go back to it now that Workday is hopefully playing along with us. So let's begin. The first thing here is a list of affiliated organizations. Most of these organizations know who they are and have worked with their department over the years. Some of them have been around for quite a while and are fairly obvious. Some of them not so obvious. So if a non-affiliated student org has a question, once again, that's student activities email. But here they are. Contracts. If you are an affiliated org, you must follow the departmental policies of the university for all contracts. JS mentioned this. It's because you are affiliated with the department, therefore you must go with their departmental policies. And some departments are lucky enough to have a designated signatory that can sign contracts under 5,000. If not, or if you have a contract over 5,000, oh, how did this get still by? We're still funding Byway in places. Sorry about that. I swear I got rid of that. First of all, some general guidelines. All services performed on campus by outside vendors should have contracts in place well in advance of services being performed. Now, this is true for what we would call services providers, and those are entertainers, consultants, people who provide services like balloon animals or something like that. Well, I guess that would be an entertainer. Equipment rentals, that would be A1. Super games, you're going to have a bouncy house. You're going to have a movie on an inflatable screen. Something like that, that would be considered as well something that needs a contract. A speaker or lecturer would also need a contract. To get your contract processed ahead of time and completely signed, which is what you need to do, that is like the main thing. It needs to be signed and agreed upon in advance of the vendor doing any work. You should start at least 1 month in advance, at least, to get it through the process. Now, there are certain companies that the university has pre-approved contracts with, and a member of purchasing can help you work with those vendors. You must use these vendors. This is particularly true of bus transportation. A lot of orgs have trouble with bus transportation because they either go with Uber or some fly-by-night bus service, and you cannot do that. You need to use the vendors that are contracted with Miami, and it's Crown, Cardinal, and First Student. I believe there are three. There may be a fourth one. And these are companies that have a proven track record. They have an extra liability insurance policy on file with the universities, and they have met other certain expectations that the university has laid out. And that's why they're special vendors contracted with the university. There are also others. Travel, we are expected to use Concur for travel booking, hotels and flights. Car rentals, we have a contract with Enterprise Car Rental, and license and promotional goods. We have certain vendors that, once again, know our expectations, have agreed to our expectations, and that's why you are required to use them. For contracts created by the vendor, this applies to both businesses and independent contractors. Vendor-created contracts can never contain the following: a down payment or deposit. Miami doesn't do down payments or deposits. We do net 30 pay afterwards. Indemnification or clause where Miami holds vendor harmless. Nope. Governing law outside of the state of Ohio. No. Anything that mentions just the word just lost my mind. But anything that mentions anything with negotiating, bargaining, lawsuits, etc., has to be within the state of Ohio. And I have added a new one: language contradictory to Senate Bill 1. I have been adding to all my contracts basically that, especially ones that contain a privacy clause. A lot of entertainers like to include a privacy clause. And I say that's fine, except in cases where Senate Bill 1 may require the divulging of this information. I've got a specific clause I add because of that. If your contract that you submit does contain any of this verbiage, purchasing will strike it. I will also add that the side letter agreement exists to supersede any of that language in a vendor-created contract. Now, if you use the standard Miami PSA or service agreement, you don't have to worry about the side letter. But if the vendor has submitted a contract they've created, we will need to add the side letter. Okay. Contract approval does not trigger a payment. It just is one step along the process. Once a contract is approved by purchasing with a signature from the Chief Procurement Officer, Mark Taylor, if needed, or if you're a designated signatory, you'll get access to that signed contract. Once you have that signed contract in hand, you will need to enter a requisition. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. And then once that requisition is approved, a purchase order will automatically be generated by the Workday system, and it will be sent to the vendor via the email that has been entered on file for them as a supplier. That is not in the process. An invoice will need to be submitted by the responsible office or the vendor to initiate payment. So that requisition just says, yes, you're approved. You can go ahead and do the service or supply the goods on X date, X time for X money. The final part is that invoice, which starts the payment process. Contracts with companies. Contracts with companies are all basically services performed by a business using an LLC, and they will usually have a corporate EIN, which is not an SSN. It's a tax identification number assigned to that business, whether it be an LLC, an Inc., or something else. This requires the services agreement contract, or, as I've said earlier, an edited version of the vendor's contract. The vendor's contract does have to have that attached side letter. Typically, this is an entity, and by the way, where are all these? I apologize. I changed all these. I must have clicked undo right after I did it because they're all popping back up. If I'm sure about whether a vendor is an entity or a personal person, check with accounts payable. You can send an email to that purchasing at miamioh.edu, or you can send an email to accounts payable and they will answer that for you. Contracts should never be signed by anyone other than the approved signatory and the vendor, of course. I mean, even if you've got a student org treasurer who's itching to sign it, they can sign it, but it's not gonna, it basically means nothing on that contract. It has to be signed by approved signatories. And over certain thresholds, you must go through the Workday contract routing to the purchasing office. And purchases over $10,000 do require competitive bidding. There are exceptions to that. Obviously, the exception to that is if we have a special contract like a charter bus service, or if it's something that there is a sole source. But usually if it's 10,000 or above, you have to get competitive bids from 3 companies who can perform the same or similar services. You do not have to go with the lowest bidder if you have a verifiable reason for not going with that vendor. For example, you've got 3 bids, but 2 of them you've had trouble with the past and they haven't fulfilled their agreement, et cetera, et cetera. You can go with that 3rd vendor that you choose. You just have to make a verifiable case for that. This does not apply to performers, speakers, entertainments with celebrity appeal. For example, if you want to hire Seth Meyers to come in, obviously there are other comedians out there, but you're not going to get 2 other bids from other comedians. You want Seth Meyers. If you do not submit competitive quotes, you can click a box that says sole source, meaning you are certifying that this is the only vendor that can supply this service or goods. And then you must write a short description in words saying why this is a sole source. And I will tell you that is very hard to get approved as a good viable contract. Most times you can and will need to submit to other competitive bids. Okay. All right, contract routing. The first thing you're going to do once you get your contract signed, you have all your documentation in place, you're going to actually enter the contract. You're going to go into Workday and you're going to authenticate. And then you're going to type in CREREQ, which is basically Workday shorthand for create requisition. You're going to choose from the search that comes up create requisition. You're going to choose contract as type. This is for contracts over $5,000. And you're going to complete all the required fields. You're going to attach all documentation, sole source if you have it, signed contract, anything else you need that purchasing will need to review and approve your request. You're then going to check out as normal for a requisition. And what this does is by choosing that requisition, this will forward it on to purchasing for a special business process that will start that review process. They will go through their required motions and hopefully will approve your contract and you're good. Once again, must be submitted at least 30 days prior to when the contract is needed. Independent contractors, important guidelines to remember here. This is a little different because we're dealing with individuals and not LLCs or entities or corporations. And this is anyone who does business under their own individual name using an SSN, Social Security number. And typically these are going to be consultants, speakers, lecturers, DJs, bands, photographers. I don't want to say low level, but usually below the 5,000 threshold and provide very limited services. They may be referred to as sole proprietors, but Miami will refer to them as independent contractors. It's because they are not Miami University employees. I bolded this because this is something that we always get a question about, and no, there is no way to work around it. Students and full-time staff and faculty can never be paid as independent contractors by any department or student org. Now, everyone is like, well, why? Why can't we pay them? Well, when you think about it, it makes sense. If you pay a student who's a full-time student and receiving financial aid, that can mess up their financial aid. It can also mess up their status as a full-time student. It can create an undue tax burden on them. It can cause all sorts of issues. Not to mention the optics aren't that great if we hire students to do stuff that outside contractors can do. And we are dealing with state of Ohio money. We are a public institution. Staff and faculty, the same sort of thing, except obviously the financial aid. It will mess up their tax status, their benefits, their status as a full-time employee. So that's why we do it. It's not because we just arbitrarily don't want to give students money or pay them. There are valid reasons why we cannot pay them. First thing you're going to do is you're going to gather all the necessary information. If you have a vendor in mind, you're going to contact them. If you don't have a vendor in mind, contact purchasing or student activities. We can recommend vendors that have worked out in the past that do a certain specific service you're looking for. But what you're going to do is you're going to get all this information, fill out your contract so it will be denied by HR. How much are you going to pay them? What are they going to cost? Any materials, resources you will need to provide for them to perform their services. A W-9 if they're a United States citizen, a W-8-BEN if they are not a United States citizen. You also need to complete the PSA, which is the Professional Services Agreement, the ACH, which is the direct deposit form, and the OPERS form, which basically states that I'm an independent contractor. I'm not receiving retirement from Miami. That's another thing that can get messed up if we were to pay faculty staff. Other information that is not required but may be requested if there are questions, so it's good to know this ahead of time so when purchasing asks, you have it, is are they a retiree? This might affect their retirement. Probably not, but they need to know that if they are, whether they're a former Miami employee, if they're not a retiree, but they're a former employee, and possibly their resume if there's question about their ability to perform the services that you want. There are multi-step processes for approval, and at the web link provided, you can find all those forms. The first is the examination of service. Once again, start a month out. Basically, this is when purchasing takes the high-level view. What do you want? How much you're going to pay, et cetera, et cetera. Does this kind of fall in line with things that have happened in the past? Is this a valid service provider? Are they a trustworthy service provider? Do you have the PSA completed? Do you have all your other forms ready? Are they set up in Workday as a vendor? If not, we will need to do that. And then finally, a requisition will need to be completed in Workday. Here are examples of the Professional Services Agreement and the OPERS form. It basically, once again, like I said, acknowledges they are an independent contractor. All these forms can be found on the purchasing site. I believe most of them will also be on Miami Central and in the Canvas Student Org Treasurer site. So step one, submit the independent contractor request. This is on that website. It's basically a TDX form that says, here's what we want to do. It gives purchasing a heads up to start the process. Then you're going to either set up the vendor if they're not in Workday, or if they are, you're going to make sure they're in there. The next step, once you get everything signed and you're ready to go, is you're going to either have that signed by the departmental signatory, and you're going to enter it as a services or goods type of requisition. If a signature is needed by purchasing, you're going to enter it as a contract requisition. Those are important to know because those are different business processes and they have different routing. Contract routing is here, once again, how you do it. You're going to authenticate into Workday. You're going to type in CREREC to create that requisition. You're going to choose the correct requisition type, whether that's goods, services, or contract. Attach all documentation, and then you're going to check out as normal and submit that requisition. And here we go with that 30 days again. I'm beginning to think that's a theme. Then next is insurance, and I'm going to turn that back over to JS, but I will say those two emails, the one for purchasing, the one for student activities, are your friends. use them when you need to. All right, and I am going to, okay, well, I can't, oh, there we go. All right, JS, back to you.
Sorry, my Zoom was acting up. Trying to get it to share and unmute and all of that fun stuff. So, for insurance and risk management, Miami has, and I'm going to get into RSOs a little here also. Miami has a general liability process and insurance that will cover, of course, what we do, depending a lot of what the affiliated organizations will do. However, there are cases, and as an example, bringing in inflatables that you will need to secure insurance from the external vendor, proving that they have the coverage. And that's on a what is the risk basis for that. At the end of the day, Rosemary Volk is the one who determines is there a need for external insurance or not. So a few other things. We just have a couple things left here before we wrap. One, account and funding types. So Lisa, jump in if I say anything wrong here. But organizations have their ASG designated funding account. So this is where any ASG funding goes. This does get swept back typically at the end of each semester. Student orgs and affiliated orgs qualify for this as well, as long as they do the things, can get their standard ASG funding, which is for events or administrative needs or for capital items they're going to keep. But they have to complete, in the past, rubric rewards to the level of what funding they may need. An important thing here is rubric rewards. After this semester, you won't be hearing that term much anymore because in our list of changes, hub to Miami Central, the office change, etc., we will have a new replacement for rubric rewards that we'll be announcing later in the summer. Unity funding is when 3 or more groups work together. So if your affiliated org is also working with Spectrum and whomever else, stage left, then that's 3 groups working together, and that's where Unity funding comes in. But the important part and how this plays out is there can't be any double dipping into the general student fee fund. So the money that comes in from the student activities fees, the group cannot get money from more than one source that gets money from there. So the best example is MAP money comes from there, club sports money comes from there. They cannot also apply for ASG funding in this way. The agency account is for fundraising, sales, dues, which typically isn't much of a thing with affiliated organizations. That is what will frequently be in this account. If you collect money to buy t-shirts, like everyone's buying a t-shirt and you're collecting $15 a pop for them to get them, that money would go in this account. The important thing to note, just like our registered student organizations, there can be no use of Venmo, PayPal, Kickstarter, any of those things where you would get the funds from an external service. And the reason is those have to be direct deposited into a bank account, and there is no direct deposit into a student organization or really departmental account in the way that we would need from this. What can be purchased through agency accounts? That's wide open. Typically, the 2 biggies that cannot be purchased, which is easier to say, is anything overseen by the ATF, so alcohol, tobacco, or firearms, and pornography. Any of those things cannot be purchased, but it is the students' money. They raise the money and they can spend it for a lot of other things that they're interested in. Whereas ASG funds must be spent on what they requested from ASG. Potential other accounts. Some organizations will have an account through the department. Again, no double dipping, but either your department has an account that you also give the students money out of, or you have a separate account. A university designated account, which is typically you're getting money from one of the funds like student activities fees, and in that case, ASG wouldn't necessarily happen, and gift accounts. And so the big thing I wanted to mention about gift accounts, the difference between money the organization fundraises and money that is donated through Move In Miami or some other means to the organization. Donated money must be used for a specific purpose, whatever you asked for the money for. So on, say, Move In Miami is one of the easier examples a lot of people use. You say, we want the money for this. Well, the money then has to be used for that. And it cannot be redonated. So you can do a fundraiser to raise money for the American Cancer Society, and that money can get donated to them. You cannot take the money you got through Move In Miami and then donate it to them. You can't redonate donations. It becomes an entire tax hassle that's just not worth doing. Moving on, some of the advisor expectations. Oversee the organization running in stability. Ensure compliance with university policies and procedures. Approve financial transactions on workday. So the students put in a rec or something like that, you have to go in and approve. Keep an eye on the org's budget and funds. Make sure they're not going into the negative, spending more than they have. Support the student development. Duties as assigned by the department may have things that they want you to work on with the organization. And then you have various support options. Naturally, you have people in your department. You also have our office. And there are a number of other people we can connect you to in the university if you're having an issue with something specific that we can get you support. The other thing, and hey, being on here, you're getting a little tip and trick that most people don't know about. Advisors must annually renew email entity accounts. And they must be the ones who control password changes because it defaults to the advisor's default password. So that link that you'll see there that I put in, annual renewal, if you click on that and log in, that is a list of every entity account you oversee. So what I do when I get back to school sometime in January, when I'm ready, I go in and renew every entity account that I work with. So once a year, in January, get them all done. Don't have to think about it until the next January, and the next January I do it again. Even if I need to start one in, say, September, that next January I'm renewing, so they all stay on that cycle. And most people don't have this link that lists all of your entity accounts. So finally, the last thing, we're not going to dive too deeply into this because I know with the time, Miami Central, the important things here is Miami Central is a new system that is going to manage organizations and so much more. So orientation will be using this program. Career services will be using this program. A lot of the academic area, because this is going to provide the official co-curricular transcript, will be looking at things in this. So there are a number of things you can do with this. What I'll point out, if your department or division wants a page where they can share things with students, award students badges, things like that, you can scroll down and register your department, or for those in Res Life Residential Community. So departments can go here and register. Student org registration is now closed, but if your affiliated org hasn't registered, if you click groups and all groups, register your org is still there. So you can still go in and go through the process. That is for a limited time. In a week or so, sometime in June, we are fully turning that off, and anyone who needs it then, as far as registered student orgs, will just have to go through the process again. Affiliated orgs, you determine if the affiliated org exists, so we'll still be helping affiliated orgs get their stuff in. You can see here, this is our current active list of affiliated organizations on campus. So no needing to update things. You can see those that are active here. So a couple things I'm going to show you that are important here. I'm just going to an org I work with that I've set these things up with. When you go in and you're on the manage side, of course, you have your group page, your public page that you'll see a lot and that everyone will see when they come. there is a manage button at the top when it loads. Okay, so there's a manage. You have your public page. Officers can post things. You'll have your events there. You can have surveys or forms. People can see documents, officers, photos, etc. And you can set this up how you want. Like here, this group has their Instagram and email available. But when you go to manage, there's a lot of different things you can do. One of the key things is you can manage your members and officers. So this is how you give people the permissions to do different things. If you go into members, you can click an officer button that will show up right here. So you can make someone an officer, and then you go back into the dashboard and can control their role as an officer. So, for example, this is the secretary of the organization. You can also do tags, and tags are one of the really cool things that the system allows you to do. So if we go back to the membership list here, you can edit member tags. And so, for example, this person, I know that they are the Meeples representative for the organization. So I can just go in, it's that simple. You can tag them with different things. So committees, this person's on the council and is part of the leadership team. You can tag different things. And with that, you can also do badges. So as you're going through the different things that you have for the organization, you can track attendance at meetings, etc. You can offer up badges. So these are the two badges that we created for this example in here. This is for people on the leadership team or council, and this is just for a general member. But you go in here, you upload a badge, and then you get to choose when you're creating it. Do you want them to be able to add this to their LinkedIn profile? So on their LinkedIn profile, they'll get a little badge, say from the Honors College, that they can get a badge saying they have completed this program and are certified in this, or whatever you need them to complete. So we can create badges for them. You can set whether it's private, whether it's a badge for an organization or individuals. And then you can also go in here and set group rules. So in this case, if a user becomes a group officer where the group is this, at least one time, they earn this badge. So you can set those conditions. One of the other things with that is the system in here for tracks and checklists, where I was saying, this is league meeting attendance, and say every or you register every week in here, and they have to attend 3/4 of meetings. So you're tracking the attendance, but then they also have to submit a reflection on you, and that's something that can get checked off in here. And so just like RedBrick Rewards is used for orgs, you can use this for members, for them to complete trainings, complete things within your org, track their progress and their roles, whatever you want, and then award badges for this. The other thing that those will award is points. I'm at 416 points. I'm kind of one of the people who's in this daily, so that's natural. The other use I'm going to point out quickly, and then I'm going to check and see if I need another one. In Connect here, you can see the student leaderboard of who's at the top of the leader list for doing the most in the system. It's mainly faculty staff right now because we're all approving organizations and stuff. But you have the organization directory where you can go in, make connections with people. You can go to a person and send them a message. So if you need to message back and forth with someone, like we're going to have, this will be one of the key messaging tools for our peer mentors in the organizations, that the peer mentors will get a message through here to then respond to and answer those questions in a much more live, chatty function. But you can also go to what people are looking for: business partners, funding, ideas, what their career interests are, what their general interests are. So if you're looking for someone who's interested in books and reading, you can go on here and see the 268 students who have listed that they're interested in books and reading if you want to reach out to them because you're working with an English honorary and think they might be a good fit or something like that. So these are just a few of the uses. Some of what I put in here. There's a lot of customization. Events and attendance you can put in here, and then for attendance, whether it's meetings, events, etc., the students scan a QR code and check themselves in. So you don't have to be tracking the attendance as they walk through the door or while they're sitting there. They check themselves in by scanning the QR. I showed you the tags. There's a lot of ways to do surveys and forms, communication tools, badges, and then the workflows I kind of showed you. And the other thing with Miami Central is this is a mobile first platform. You can go to the App Store or Google Play Store or wherever you want, and you can search Miami Central. And you will get a specially built app for Miami Central. You can see on the left there the picture that I have of, this is just the front page that loads up when I go into the page. Over on the right, I can see an organization page and what I need there. And then if there's those messages you're getting, like, hey, remember to go complete this check mark to approve your organization or anything like that. As you can see from Elizabeth down at the bottom, you can get messages and questions popping up straight on your phone. So you're just texting with the students through this secure system where you can help them get the information they need. And hey, everyone always, when you do something like this, where you're taking screenshots from your phone, people will be like, you need to charge your battery. So, hey, look, my battery's charged. See? But this is a work in process, as is Miami Central. This is all going to keep growing and expanding as we add new features, as we add the replacement for RedBrick rewards. Orientation stuff is being added and has been added for next week, etc. So this is going to be a living, growing platform. And if you're interested in help with getting your department on here, what you can do with it, or your affiliated org, if you haven't done that yet, most have, feel free to reach out. Finally, last slide. Mega Fair registration is now open. It closes July 15th. We will be closing Mega Fair registration early this year for a number of reasons. So you must be registered by July 15th. The organization must be fully approved in the system to register. So those are the important information you need. Now, if you can't tell, my voice is 90% still here, maybe 80. If anyone has any questions, I'll be sticking around, but very much thank you all for your time here. We hope this was beneficial to help you understand more about an affiliated organization, what it means, etc. And look for upcoming trainings in the future where we'll be giving you more information and more opportunities. Thank you all and have a great holiday weekend.
Paul,
Hey, JS. Sorry.
Yeah.
If I'm getting on top of somebody else, I apologize. So this is recorded. I'm assuming you're going to send out so I can share with everybody else on our team.
Yep. We are going to
Awesome.
share out the video and presentation with all the links.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you.
And yes,
That was
we'll
my
share
first
a copy
question.
of Lisa's slides also.
Okay.
What was that, Kim?
That was my first question. My second question is based on my admin level in Miami Central, can I see who has registered for Mega Fair?
I'll come over
And
and check with you.
I'm not on campus,
Oh.
so,
Let me.
and I don't need that information today, so don't get hung up on that because other people might have questions.
Okay.
Those were just a couple of things.
Let's talk early next week to figure it out.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
I'm still here as well. If anyone has a question, I can answer. I'll hang around for a few minutes.
Lisa, do we have any money left or are we broke?
Not broke yet.
That was a joke.
Although it is getting to be the end of the fiscal year, everyone. So
Yay. Okay. All right. Well, you guys have a good Memorial Day weekend and good job, JS. Thank you.
Thanks. You as well. Okay. Thank you all. Lisa, appreciate it.
anytime.
Have a good weekend.
You too, all.